So I was telling you actually that I wrote a blog post today called Expanding Your Focus. And a lot of people don't agree with me on this. However, I love the terminology of outcomes versus goals. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's really an interesting idea because, I mean, people get so focused on the goal that they lose sight of everything between them and the goal, and they really don't do a good job of enjoying the journey on the way to where they're going.
I agree with that. The analogy I actually did on my blog post today was I actually put a picture, an image of a dartboard. And when you're throwing darts, what are you focused on?
Just the bullseye.
Just the bullseye, right? And no different than a horse being on a track. They put blinders on the horse, and the horse is trained only to see the track and nothing else. And so what happens? People get tunnel vision with the word goal. And I found that through the research I've done with NLP and subconscious and unconscious programming, that when we hear the words goal, we contract. When we hear outcomes, we expand.
Oh, interesting. Is that why the people get to the goal and then they're unfulfilled, or they don't find that joy that they were looking to get when they were originally starting out?
Well, part of it is they've lost so many other things. I mean, if you think about life is never linear, right? There's curves and turns and twists and ups and downs. I mean, it's a roller coaster ride, if you will. And there is not one path to getting there. And I think a part of it is they're losing out on a lot of the, like you said, joy, but it's also the opportunities that are there for them. There's not one way to get to some place. However, if we're so pigeonholed, our actual focus gets so narrowed, we actually miss opportunities, connections, all sorts of things that are actually there, but we just don't see them because we're still focused on the bullseye.
Oh,
Does
I
that
think
make
that's
sense?
such a Oh, for sure. It's such a great point because, I mean, if I think about in my own journey, all the people like yourself and a guy named Bo Henderson and my friend Iqbal that I wouldn't have met had I stayed totally pinpointed on exactly where I thought I was going. In fact, it's been phenomenal to see the opportunities that have opened up as soon as you put a message out there and somebody says, "Hey, have you thought of it this way?" And you start going, "Well, yeah, that's something that I hadn't even considered." Like today, perfect example. I was talking about a survey that I've been doing amongst working moms, as far as why working moms want so much to contribute. And this girl that I work with that hardly ever says anything. She looked up and she said, "Corey, that's the only thing that makes you stop feeling guilty about leaving your home and your children to go to work. So if you're not making a difference at work, you feel totally guilty." Now, I wouldn't even have thought about that or that viewpoint coming from that source, but boy, when you stay open to all the universe is bringing in, it's amazing the answers you can get.
And that's what you said. What you just said there is the piece that I'm getting to, is the fact that you're open, your vision, your hearing, everything is more expanded because you're not so pigeonholed on one idea, not one way. And I always teach a lot about the both and mentality, because for me, who are we to judge what is right and what is wrong? And on top of that, if I'm open to what Corey has to share or Corey's idea, it might actually add to my idea. It might subtract from my idea, but it also might add to my idea. So I always think it's important for everyone to be just more aware of other people's ideas, other people's, everyone's educated in a different way. They've learned either in school. Some people have actually not gone to college. They've learned because they've been literally working since the time they're 14, 15, 16. Now that people have gone on to do master's degrees and doctorates, but I don't think it's just education in that sense. I think it's education in what we do and what we experience and how we live that out.
Oh, for sure. And then there's a really huge leadership piece there. I know at work that sometimes, you want to get people involved and you don't necessarily know how, and the best way is to let them have an idea. And I was talking to a really smart young manager who says, sometimes I don't even like their ideas, but I let them go with it because if the idea falls on its face, at least they can see that. But if I kill their idea, they're not going to follow me anywhere.
And let's talk a little bit about leadership, because you and I have some pretty phenomenal friends, and we've read, Mark Sanborn's books, and I love the Fred Factor and 2.0, and Bob Burg's books, The Go-Giver, and you're in the program, so you're exposed to all these wonderful people. I love the fact that you're in a position where you're in a leader in essence where you were. However, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you've applied some of the teachings and that how you lead from a different place. You don't lead as an I am the authority. You lead and get your team involved.
Well, it's just amazing because yesterday we had a conversation with one of my favorite radio personalities, and we were talking about John Maxwell's The Law of the Process, which means that you can't just walk into any situation and take over. And they asked me, well, how does this law of the process apply to what you do? And for instance, I'm a pharmacist in a large company, and I see this from the bottom and I see this from the top. There'll be this person coming out of pharmacy school. Well, all of a sudden, now they are degreed and now they're licensed. So they walk into a place where people have been working for 15 years and they think they're just going to take over. Without building credibility, without building relationships, without going ahead and saying, you know what, I'm willing to clean the bathrooms to show you that I'm one of you. Instead, they walk in and they go, well, I'm the authority, you have to listen to me. And they don't know why they don't get any buy-in. And then, of course, their career immediately goes downhill because they lose the momentum that they got coming out of school, and they end up in despair. And then the other side of that coming from over me is I can't tell you how many times I've watched, say, a change in district managership or regional managership, and they walk in and they go, okay, Carly, this is what's wrong with your store, and I need you to fix this, 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 and this, and this, without saying, hi, Carly, my name is so-and-so. Let's establish a relationship. What is it that you folks here need from me to make you be successful? And then they'll wonder, why don't my programs get done? Why doesn't anybody buy into what I'm doing? So I think the biggest thing, regardless of your title, regardless of your position, is you should always be process focused. What does it take for me to get buy-in, and understand that relationships override everything. Make sure that you're not working with Carly the tech. You're working with Carly, who has however many children, who has whatever situation's going on. And I always laugh because in corporate America, the big thing is about authority. No one wants to establish relationships. No one wants to get really close to their employees because they're afraid they're going to lose authority. And I laugh at that because, one thing that I've learned in my 25 years of experience is that when something goes wrong, everybody knows who's in charge.
That's very true. It's that's part of the whole leadership thing is if you've run your team effectively, they know that they can go to you for anything. They know they can talk to you about anything. And I have a huge sunspot on my face now. The sun is coming down. It's beautiful. And it's right in my eyes. Oh, well. But anyways, we'll ignore that. But what I was going to say is what I find so important about leadership in terms of collaborative leadership, when we teach our employees that they too are leading and that they can come to us with anything, I think the core to any leadership is communication. Because if there is no communication, you might as well not even have any leadership.
Well, that's so true. I mean, it's really funny because the best thing that you can do as a leader is to make everybody understand that they're one of you. There's a word that's outlawed in my pharmacy, and that's the word boss. I don't have employees, I have coworkers. I have people that do things that I am not good at 10 times better than I do, so I give them that ball and let them run with it. A lot of people won't do that because they're afraid that as they delegate, things won't get done to their satisfaction. Well, what's really interesting about that is that I only do 2 or 3 things really well. I look at other people and I understand how they feel because for whatever reason I can remember how something made me feel. And I look at other people and I'm able to figure out what talent they have. And the most exciting thing in the world is to take somebody who has a talent and say, you know what, go with it. And I will be here to help you fix anything you break, and I'll be here to help you celebrate when you make it rock. Because one of the things is that when you trust people, and I think America's a really funny place to live in right now because trust is so rare. But the best way to build trust is to give trust. Here's a task. Go make the most of it. And I'll be here when you have questions, but I will do what David Eisenhower said, look, give them a task and then get out of their way and let them do it. And I just think that's fascinating. I think when real leaders don't need the credit. Real leaders need the internal satisfaction of knowing they helped somebody else get the credit.
Now that's something else that's really important. You said something that was really key there was stepping out of the way, because if we micromanage, we actually create so many problems, and we're not going to get the results and the outcomes that we want from these people. We're going to get substandard work because they're going to be so stressed out, and they're actually going to feel like you're micromanaging them. And I think a part of being the leader is, first of all, training them so that they have the tools. They have to have the tools. So if you train them with good tools, then you should have no doubt in your mind that they can do an excellent job. As a leader, that's the main thing, is you can't just bring on an employee and not give them any education, and then when they screw up, go, oops, and expect something from them if they don't even have the tools to do it. So if you provide them with the tools that they need to succeed, then you have no issue stepping away and letting them do their thing. And you're going to have outstanding results that way because you've trained them. You've given them the tools that they need. They know they can come talk to you about anything if they do need assistance. They're not going to be penalized if they don't know. And, that creates that collaborative leadership. And I wish more people got what collaborative leadership was and weren't afraid to let go, to delegate, just knowing that before they do the delegation, that they just have to give these people the tools. And they have so much less stress, and then have a much better team, better outcomes, and everybody be happier.
Oh, I agree. One of the things that I always keep in mind myself is how can I personally 10 times my results? And the reason that I can 10 times my results on anything I do is because I only do the things that I'm good at. I only do customer relations, I only do associate relations, and I only do networking. In business, it's important to understand that the Pareto principle really does work, and it overrides everything. So you're going to get 80% of the results from the 20% of the things you do best. But so often, because of the micromanaging that you talked about, we lose focus and we spend 80% of our time doing 20% of our results. So what we need to do is take that other 20% and give it to people who love to do what we aren't good at. I remember going to a seminar with Darren Hardy, the editor of Success Magazine, in January, and Darren said, the most phenomenal thing that he's learned is that somebody loves to do what you hate to do. He used the example of Excel spreadsheets. He says he can't stand them. And yet there's a guy that lives for that. So take that guy, use him so that you can 10 times your results by doing the things that you do very, very well. And I like what you said about giving the tools. But one of those tools is empowerment. And that means that, you know what, Carly? Do it the way you would do it if it was your baby. So like, for example, if I have an electrician come to my house, they always want to make sure that you tell them exactly where you want this outlet and that switch. And I always say the same thing. You don't want to know where I want them. What I want to know is how you would do them if it was your house. Why? Because that's the expert. And he's going to put it where it makes the most sense. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you say, hey, you know what? You do this, and I promise I won't come back on you, then all of a sudden, not only are they going to do it the way they would do it in their house, they're going to do it the best possible way because they're so used to people saying, you know what, I'm going to treat you like a child. No one wants to be treated like a child. And I think we can really empower people, but we can also actually do tremendous damage when we micromanage by saying, you know what, Carly, I'm going to give you a job and then I'm going to prove to you that I don't trust you.
Yeah, and it's funny, once we do that, they actually will start doing things to self-sabotage. I mean, it's again taking someone that's an adult and treating them like they're a 2-year-old. But the funny part that most people don't get is that once you start doing that, their unconscious and subconscious actually literally does go back to being 2 and 4 and 6 years old. So when we're getting yelled at, what happens? Our inner child literally goes into the 2, 4, 6-year-old being screamed at, and then they're having a tantrum and acting out in the adult form. So we micromanage, we trigger them, we put them back into the state of childhood, and then they act out and we wonder why. And it's like, we created it. If we
Exactly.
didn't do X, Y, and Z, they wouldn't be being triggered and acting out like having a tantrum. So it's really fascinating once you start studying more and more about the unconscious triggers, that if we actually know the responses to unconscious triggers, then we can do things to not allow that to happen. We can prevent that through treating them like real adults that they are. Give them respect, give them some responsibilities. Now, of course, again, communication. If they really aren't doing the tasks or the job that they have and they're not fulfilling it, you have to have the conversation. Not beating them up and having the conversation. I'll give you a perfect example. A lady that I work with, she was showing up late, like every single day. And every day would be a different excuse. And when I first had her start coming in, she was coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I realized that was kind of really rough. I could see that she was late all the time. So I was like, oh, why don't we have a start time set up at 11? She's only here 2 hours a day, and she helps me out. And so, but she started showing up late. At 11 o'clock, she started showing late. Well, so then we moved the time to noon. I figured, I'm trying to figure out ways. I'm asking her, is it going to be easier for you to get here in time if it's later? Because I know she has, kids and all this other stuff. And well, next thing I know, 12 o'clock's here, and she starts, it's 12:05, 12:10, 12:15. So I finally had a conversation with her, and I said to her, I said, I'm not here. Are you there?
Yep.
We lost. That's okay. Thank God we have editing. We're going to edit this anyway. It lost, came back in. What I'm going to do with this file anyways, I'm going to make this into a podcast, and we'll do another one with video since there's the lighting issues anyway, so I'll have my editor edit it.
Okay.
But anyways, so what I was saying is, so she started showing up, 12, 12:05, 12:10, 12:15, so I finally sat her down and I said, I really need to have a conversation. It's stressful for me if you show up late every time. I never know. I said, I book appointments with clients, phone calls and stuff like that, knowing around your schedule of coming in. So, and immediately she started getting defensive and all this other thing. And so I finally said to her, I want you to think about this. I said, how you show up here late, where is that else showing up in your life? Because somewhere
Good point.
Exactly. I mean, where's it showing up else in your life? If you're late for me, you've been working with me for 2 months, and you've literally been late 3/4 of the time. It's not just here. It's showing up in other areas of life. And so once I started showing her that perspective and how she could be missing out on opportunities, if you show up on time, you're actually the opportunities the universe is there for you. You'll have a lot more opportunities. When you're late, time and time and time again, how many opportunities are you missing? And she really thought about that, and she's like, wow, I never thought about that. And before she left, she came in and she said, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really am going to think about that. And obviously the days after that, she's been on time. However, a lot of times, and I explained also a little bit about people that are in time and through time, which is an NLP thing, but the people that are more flowy, like I never wear a watch. I mean, ever since I've had a cell phone, I don't need to have a watch on my wrist too. I've never been one to wear watches. I literally can tap into an eternal clock. And obviously, if I have a meeting, I'm going to put a meeting in my cell phone that I get a notification. And usually, I'm still ahead of it before it even goes off. It's just getting people to be accountable for their time. And that's respect for her and for me. And I think that's like anything. That's about the feedback. So if you do hire someone and aren't doing a job to your satisfaction, or they're ignoring their obligations, you need to have a conversation. However, you have to do it in a way that they can hear you. If you start beating them up, their walls are going to come up, they're going to get defensive, and nothing's going to be accomplished.
I love that sentence, in a way that they can hear you. There's such a difference between being a mentor and being, like you say, a disciplined person. Remember, I'll never forget, the best book I read as far as managing goes was First Break All the Rules. And one of the reasons I liked that book is they said, they interviewed death row inmates, and they couldn't get the death row inmates to understand why they were even on death row. I mean, well, the guy deserved to die, so why would you execute me for killing him? And their point was, well, if, even the death row inmate isn't going to understand why he's on death row, how are you going to get the employee to see that they're wrong? Instead of getting into issues of right and wrong, what you did there before was, how could this work better for you? How can we make your life more successful? And I think oftentimes my favorite thing to do is just what you said. Let's ask a question. And I remember I had this woman that I like to call a wave person. She was such a great worker, but when she got tense, everybody in the room had to be tense. So like if you threw a rock in a pond and the waves go like this, that's how it was working for her. And I asked her one time, I had to do her evaluation. I said, I said, how do you feel when, you're all tense and now everybody in the room is all tense? And how would you feel if you use those other people to actually help you calm back down? And we got in a conversation about how stressed out she was, that she felt other people didn't like her because of that, but she didn't know how to stop it. And so when you make it a two-way street and a conversation rather than a finger pointing event, it's just amazing how people can surprise you. I guess, that's my favorite thing about being in business is all the times I've been really surprised by the potential that people have. It's just that they're so conditioned to believe that it's a carrot and stick world out there, and that if they do something wrong, if they step the wrong way, they're going to get punished. And
Well,
I
we
don't
have a
think we have to
culture
do
of that. Our whole culture is no. And you're going to be. I'm going to take away your Nintendo. Everything is threats. Barter. If you do this, I'll give you this. If you don't do this, I'm taking away this. And so our culture, we're raised with all that fear. So no one, and that's the same thing about lying. People are so afraid to tell the truth because they're conditioned from growing up that if they tell the truth, they're going to get in trouble.
That's really sad.
So it's just a cultural thing, and I think the more we get away from that culture of that and getting more into the culture of honest communication where you can tell anybody anything. So I gotta tell people, all my clients know about my past. I mean, I don't understand people sweeping stuff under the carpet. Well, first of all, I can teach from experience. So my past, although it wasn't pretty, gave me the ability to teach from experience, and they know I'm coming from experience. And obviously, certain topics are a lot of people, especially when it comes to abuse and all that, people do not want to share that, do not want to talk about that. And it's like, well, because then, again, when you focus on expanse, people are like, well, if you share that you've been abused, then you're focusing on it. I'm like, not really. If I share that I've been abused and I use it from an empowering place, that if I can do it, so can you, I'm still here, I'm still standing, that's different than me focusing on, woe is me, victim energy, I've been abused, I hate everybody type of energy. And I think more and more we get people to stop stigmatizing abuse, whether it be sexual, physical, verbal, and all these other issues that are out there in the world, and start being honest about what we've been through and where we are, we can help so many more people. But we do. We were afraid. We get so into nervous mode, we get embarrassed mode, and we sweep everything under the carpet. And then it's like, eventually people find out anyway. That's just the nature of the beast. People are curious. They once they get to know you more, they want to know more. And one sentence by accident, you slip something out, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you never told me you had a brother. Wait a minute, you never told me." And then mistrust enters. And once mistrust enters, there goes the relationship. There's always going to be a seed of doubt. If she's lied to me about this, what else is she lying to me about? One of the perfect examples of this is online dating. I hear this all. It's like stories you see on the internet about this, right? Women or men, I don't care who it is, lying about their age. And then they meet somebody. It's like, if you're willing to lie about your age, what else are you willing to lie about? And that's what people don't get about these little things. When I bring up these little examples, like lying about your age on online dating, or, it could be a zillion different things. Even in-person dating, people not sharing. They have kids. They don't want to date a guy and let them, they think the guy, if they find out they have children that maybe they don't have, and their ex has the children, then they'll be looked upon as a bad parent. And so they just lie. They don't tell the truth. They've been divorced too many times. They don't want to share that. They're widowed. They don't want to share that. All these things, and it goes both ways, male or female. And I find, think about it this way, and I use this analogy a lot. Okay, you're on a date, right? And you don't say anything about anything. For me, I've got to lay everything on the table. Hey, here's all the crap, but this is who I am now. And it's like, you either can love me, accept me for what I am now, or you can judge me by my past, and this is completely over. Why am I going to waste 3 months, or however length of time you want to call it, a dating protocol, okay, to share as things eventually come out, and then, boom, the big one comes out, and they're like, ooh, I can't handle that, right? Versus you meet, have a really honest conversation, and just put out there anything you think that may be embarrassing or hurtful or what have you. You can get past that and move on to something beautiful.
Oh yeah, and there's a really interesting theory that I have, and that's that everybody has a past.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
That's rocket science, right? Everybody has a past. Yet it's amazing how many people's past disempowers them, holds them back. And, it's funny because what I see as a healthcare professional is that your past does not equal your future. You do not have to be held prisoner unless you let it. It's a funny thing because, if you're walking around thinking about, like, I've got this billboard on my head that I've done all these things wrong and that everybody cares about them. I can tell you for a fact, having been a successful person all my life, that no one cares what I did last week. When my customers come to the window, they only care about what I'm going to do for them now. They don't care if I got big awards in the past. They don't care how many write-ups in the newspaper I've had, how many letters I've had that said what a great guy I am. All they want to know is, am I going to help them now? Period. And that's the way everything works. Except that we let this past that we imagine that people are going to go, oh my God, this is horrible. Now it leads to two other thoughts. The first one is, if I let my self-respect and my dignity in your hands because I'm worried about what you are going to think about the kind of person that I am because of the things that I've done and the places that I've been, I have no personal power. I am effectively, my happiness, my self-esteem is in your hands. How can I control what's in your hands? It's absolutely impossible for me to be successful if I view everything that I do based on you. And then you let to that other point, that authenticity piece. You know what? As soon as I get up here and say, you know what, I've done everything right, I'm a perfect person, I can't help you. Because all of a sudden you will start thinking that, not necessarily you, but anybody can start thinking, well, you know what, I can't be that guy. That guy's up here. It's the way we all think about certain people, whether it be Darren Hardy or whoever. But if you're a person who can go to somebody and say, you know what, I know what it's like to be hungry, then they can identify with that. And I know what it's like to be sad, and they can identify that. But I also know that you don't have to settle for that. It makes for a much better relationship. And I just thought of a story about that. I'll never forget the first time that I really learned that lesson for real. I was in my mid-20s and I was so far in debt I couldn't find my butt with both hands. My wife's heater on her car went out. It was only like $150 and I couldn't afford to fix it because I was maxed out on all my credit cards. I didn't have any money in the bank. I was so embarrassed. I got angry with myself. I started reading financial books and everything. I started realizing I was causing all my own problems, right? And so we go camping with some friends of ours, and the guy makes probably like a third of what I make. And he says, hey, do you guys want to go away for the weekend to go to this big hotel and do all this stuff? And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. And he said, why? I said, I can't afford it. And he said, wow. Because I had watched my family members put stuff on the credit card to go places because they were afraid to tell other people they couldn't afford it. And I just finally was tired of doing that, and I said, I can't afford it. A few minutes went by, and he said, wow. He said, that is so cool. And I said, what? And he said, well, now that you're able to say that to me that you can't afford it, if I can't afford it in the future, then I can just tell you. So you see, that truth isn't anywhere near as scary as we think it's going to be.
Absolutely. And one thing that you brought up that it just reminded me of what I was actually talking about is it's weird. As a culture, we are a culture of technology. And the weird part is technology has brought us closer and further apart. However, we're also people that need connection. And you mentioned connection, right? So,
Yeah.
and so it's what people don't get about that's like the old story about the baby being in an incubator or preemie. You can feed it, change it, and everything. However, if that baby isn't touched, if that baby isn't talked to, the mortality rate is a lot higher. So we're in a culture of evolving technology, different technologies with computers and cell phones and texting and all this other stuff. And in some ways, we've gotten further and further away from human connection. We have automation. When you dial a company, you get a voicemail. It's no human interaction. There's no actual humanness. And we as people, we were created to couple. We were created to be with partners. We were created to procreate. We were created to, there's that, we have a fundamental need for connection, and yet a society that's created less connection in some ways. So I think it's so vitally important for people to get that when you have relationships, and especially when you're in a position of leadership of any kind, or a managerial position of any kind, a teacher, anything with authority, you have to connect with people, because that's what people are craving, is true human connection.
Oh, I so totally agree. I have two thoughts on that. Number one is that's what's made me successful at work, is that my employees know that I care. I had a gal come to work the other day, and she was just in tears. She's a situation where she's got 4 children and, and an ex-husband, and she's got a fiance, and her fiance is disabled, and he's basically babysitting the children while she goes to work. Well, her son from her first marriage decided to, create all kinds of friction between her and her fiance, and she was just distraught. And she had recently started, and she was scared to tell me that, she needed to go home. And I said, I want you home, because if you're a better mom at home, you're going to be a better worker for me. And so just doing that one thing, that one time, now all of a sudden I'm a guy that gets her. She'll do anything I ask going forward. And I didn't do it for that reason, but it's a fact. And can I share, the second point is, can I share that I think, based on what you just said, I think that that's why social media is so big. We want to get with people who are like us, right? So you live something like 1,500 miles away from me, but I am much more connected with you and feel much closer to you than I do people that are in my own backyard. And I have friends in South Africa, in Denmark. And so I think that's what Facebook and Google Plus has done for us. They've been able to help us find those people that think like we think, so that when we are leaders in a company or at a church group, what we need to do to be successful at that is to say, okay, you know what? Regardless of our backgrounds, regardless of our education, this is how we are alike. And when you can show people how you are alike, then all of a sudden they connect. As you well know, I'm a big John Maxwell fan, and one of my all-time favorite books is called Everybody Communicates and Few Connect. It's the first book I hand any of my students and say, you know what, this degree means nothing if you can't put this book into action.
I love him. I'm actually re-listening to the 21, the 21 Laws?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually re-listening to that right now. Whenever I go for my walks, I'm always listening to audiobooks. So yeah, he's just a fabulous person, fabulous man. Well, I know me and you're having many, many more conversations. However, I do want to end this now, because that way people can actually get some of the golden nuggets that we've talked about. And I do look forward very much to our next conversation. And as usual, this will be put into a blog post, and this one's going to be a podcast. However, Corey and I will be doing future videos together, and I really look forward to that. So Corey, much love and hugs to you and your wife, and I hope that you have a marvelous week coming up, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Oh, me too. And I tell you, you've really inspired me to go out and figure out who can I connect with this week that I haven't connected with in the past. And I'm going to make a really big goal by the next time we talk to have at least 3 people that I've made new connections with.
Awesome. I really appreciate you.
You too, my friend. You take care.
Okay, bye.